What's going on, guys? Farzin Vasugian here with you on a Red Friday. Yes, it is a Red Friday. That means it is time for another episode of the Red Friday live chat. Welcome in. Hope you're all having a good Friday. It's a cold Friday indeed here in the Midwest, but that's okay. Stay indoors and tune into the Red Friday live chat. Might as well, right? Might as well. A lot of things to go over here, of course. Still coming off that Super Bowl loss this past Sunday. A lot of reactions, of course. A lot of reactions as we are now in the offseason. Let's go over some of the topics we'll cover today. And a quick housekeeping note, and I will get to your questions today. So this is a Q&A session. Drop your questions, your comments below. I will answer those as we go throughout the live stream. A lot of Chiefs fans wanting changes within the offensive coaching staff. Some of them kind of by surprise here. And what if it's due to an interview? We'll talk about that. What positions will Kansas City target this offseason? I'll give you my list. And I think this is kind of a fair representation of what a lot of people had on their list as well. So we'll go over that. And then talk about some other things. Obviously, the Philadelphia Eagles had their parade here. Seemed like, for the most part, a good parade for them. A little bit of bad news coming out of Philly during that parade. So we'll discuss that as we go on. Thank you all for joining me. I see a lot of you guys coming into the live chat on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. Thank you all. Thank you all. Appreciate you guys. It is a pleasure to be back and on board with you guys again. Yeah, drop your comments below. We'll get into it. A lot of things I want to talk to you guys about. Let's start off by getting into the coaching staff here, because a lot of Chiefs fans have been kind of questioning things lately because the Chiefs, they have not lately had any changes with the offensive coaching staff. If you've been paying attention throughout the week, there have been some significant changes, nothing too major, but there have been some moves made this week with the defensive coaching staff. The first one here is with Matt House. He is the former linebackers coach for the Kansas City Chiefs. He was previously LSU's defensive coordinator. Prior to joining the Chiefs the first time, he was Kentucky's defensive coordinator. Kentucky was not willing to let Matt House go to Kansas City. There was kind of a bidding war going on at the time. He was still under contract with Kentucky, but I don't know all the details, but they seemed to work something out to where they bought out his contract, and Matt House eventually made his way to Kansas City to be the linebackers coach. And that was from 2019 to 2021. He went to be LSU's defensive coordinator. Now he's back in Kansas City, and I know a lot of LSU fans not really big fans of his because they feel like he wasted a lot of opportunities when Jaden Daniels was there. And then another defensive coach. Oh, by the way, Matt House, he is going to be the senior advisor for the Chiefs defensive coaching staffs, which I do like. As far as other additions go, former Carolina Panthers linebacker and also a former second team All Big Ten linebacker his senior year at Wisconsin, Chris Orr. He is going to be joining the Kansas City Chiefs. He was coaching the Jackson State linebackers last year, and now he is making the big step up in the NFL and is going to be joining the Kansas City Chiefs. He's someone who's quickly kind of moved up in the coaching ranks, coaching a specific position. He's not like, the assistant inside linebackers coach. You see some of those weird positions sometimes. No, he was just the straight up linebackers coach at Jackson State, and now he's coming over to Kansas City. And we don't know exactly what his role is going to be. I imagine that's going to be announced within the next few weeks. So that is something to keep an eye on. The Chiefs did lose their safeties coach, Donald D'Alessio. He is going to Baltimore to be their defensive backs coach. And then Terry Braden, he was the assistant defensive line coach. He is going to the Nebraska Cornhuskers to be their defensive line coach. He was the assistant defensive line coach in KC. He's going to be the defensive line coach for Nebraska. So those are some of the defensive changes that we know of. There might be a few more to point out there, but we don't really know, or we're not, probably don't know right now and might not find out for a while. It's actually very common for some of these position specific coaches to kind of go under the radar and not get announced right away. But they'll come out with a coaching roster later on in the offseason. So everyone will know eventually, including the media, what their coaching staff is going to look like kind of going into offseason workouts and OTAs. So that'll be coming up fairly soon. Keep an eye on that. As far as I know, a lot of people want to know, why are the Chiefs not getting rid of Matt Nagy? If you search Matt Nagy on Twitter, the nice part about Twitter or X, whatever you call it, they kind of have an organized group of, they have a nice way of being able to search things. If you type, let's just say Patrick Mahomes, you can search it by just photos, videos, or just all posts in general. Or you can do it in recent order. So that's the nice part there. If you search Matt Nagy, there are a lot of Chiefs fans asking, why is Matt Nagy not fired? Andy Heck, another position coach on the offensive staff. He's the offensive line coach. A lot of people are wondering why he has not been let go yet, considering, there have been some issues with the offensive tackles for a couple of years now, several years, in fact. This one's kind of a surprise. This one kind of came out of nowhere. So the passing game coordinator, Joe Blameyer, he has kind of been under scrutiny lately because of a comment he gave to ESPN. And this was right before the Super Bowl, but I guess people didn't really pick up on this until after the Super Bowl. And by the way, I know a lot of you guys might be asking, what is a pass game coordinator? Kind of a weird comment. What's the difference between an offensive coordinator and a pass game coordinator? Kind of a straightforward question. I mean, an offensive coordinator obviously coordinates the entire offense. The pass game coordinator, I'm sure, as you guys can guess, they manage the passing game a lot more than anything else. And I think in terms of specifics, they kind of go into the details and the analytics with third down, red zone, any situation, like if it's 4th and long and they need to make a play in a late fourth quarter situation, well, they have to have some plays designed. So the offense has to be ready for that. I know those are not things they practice typically, but they have to be ready for it at some point. So those are the kinds of things that they help design. Specific, run pass options, just kind of having those kinds of designs and handing them to the offensive coordinator. So for those wondering, that's what a pass game coordinator does. And that the duties might vary a little bit from team to team. And again, you don't see this on every team. Some teams have a pass game coordinator in both college and or the NFL. Some teams don't. So it just kind of depends on the team and the coaches and how they want to go about things. But Joe Blameyer, he did an interview with ESPN and talked about how coaching Mahomes is a, quote, burden and a terror, and was talking about the three-peat and the pressure there is to make sure that this happens. Otherwise, this wouldn't be a great look for the organization, the players, the coaching staff, everyone involved. And a lot of Chiefs fans saw that, and they were pretty upset about it. And I'm curious with you guys. And by the way, I see a lot of you guys are here. Please ask your questions. Let me know what's on your mind. I'm already seeing some specific questions here. Player-specific questions, I may not be the best with that. And when I say player-specific, I'm talking like draft picks. So forgive me if I don't answer any of those, because I don't want to give a bad answer to some of those questions there. But if you got specific questions about a player that's currently on the Chiefs or whatnot, go ahead and ask those. Maybe I'll get to them, maybe not. But specific draft eligible players, those ones might not have the best conversations about. But we'll do a topic about the live stream about the draft later on down the line. This one will probably revolve more around free agents than anything else. And again, I see a lot of you guys' questions. Please keep them coming. I will get to those shortly. But yeah, the pass game coordinator, that's what a pass game coordinator does. Joe Blameyer, he's facing a lot of criticism from Chiefs fans, facing a lot of backlash for those comments. I honestly did not have an issue with those kinds of things. I do think the choice of words he provided, that it's a burden and a terror to coach Mahomes. Yeah, maybe could have used better words there. But at the end of the day, I think it's a blessing and a curse to be able to coach a guy like Mahomes, right? I suppose. Obviously, the blessing is you're around a generational great and someone who could go down as one of the best to ever do it. Obviously, his name has been in the conversation so many times. He's already number 2 in so many categories: postseason wins among quarterbacks, touchdown passes among quarterbacks, so many things about Mahomes in the playoffs. I mean, he's already at a level that no one ever expected this soon into his career. So what he's done has certainly someone on Instagram said the passing game coordinator under Matt Nagy is to ensure the offense will be prepared to punt. Oh, that's great. Oh, that's funny. I didn't even catch the name of the person who said that. I apologize, but that the passing game coordinator's job is to ensure under Matt Nagy that the offense will punt. That's original. I like that. Pretty funny. I mean, come on. The Chiefs didn't punt the ball that many times this year, did they? Wasn't that bad. Come on. Okay. I don't even know. What the hell were we talking about? Oh, yeah. Joe Blameyer. I'm sorry. I'm done. I promise I'm done. That was pretty funny. Of any comment I've ever read, that whoever that was, and again I missed the name, but that was pretty good. Yeah, look, the Chiefs did go to the Super Bowl. Friendly reminder. Now, it was a really terrible showing, for sure. I know a lot of people were not happy with what happened there, whether you're a fan, you're a player, you're a coach. Yeah. No one's happy with that outcome. But if you ask Andy Reid, hey, why do you still have Matt Nagy? Why do you have Andy Heck? Why do you have Joe Blameyer? Well, he's going to tell you that we've been to the Super Bowl 3 years in a row with a lot of these guys on the staff. I mean, Andy Heck's been around a long time. Matt Nagy is someone who's been on this team for so many years in total. Obviously, just his second season as the offensive coordinator, third season back in his second stint with the Chiefs. And Joe Blameyer, how long has Joe Blameyer been around? Really almost since Andy Reid's been here. Started in 2016 and has worked his way up. Was a wide receivers coach a couple of years ago, the pass game coordinator this year. So, I mean, this is he's been part of all of these guys have been part of this dynasty where the Chiefs are winning all these games here. So they're not going to get rid of these coaches. I know that's not an answer a lot of people want to hear, but the reality is that this is a team that at the end of the day, when they've won as much as they have, making a drastic change over one loss, and I know it was one massive big loss, a big stage, and it was not a good look. You still don't go through all of those changes over one game. I here's the thing. I don't agree. I don't like Matt Nagy. I'm not really a big fan of his. I just think what a lot of people need to keep in mind, I think, yes, Patrick Mahomes' numbers have certainly dropped under Matt Nagy. And that needs to improve. I'm sure Andy Reid is addressing that behind closed doors this week to his coaching staff. Like, hey, we can't let this happen. Like, we've got the best quarterback in the NFL, and his numbers have dropped in these last 2 seasons. That needs to be addressed for sure. But don't expect these changes, especially after a 15-2 season and a Super Bowl appearance. And listen, nothing was easy about this season for the Chiefs. Everyone thought this was going to be another cakewalk in the AFC West. It was not. All of the divisional games that Kansas City had their starters out, they won. Only divisional game the Chiefs lost was that last game, which obviously did not mean anything to Kansas City. So Patrick Mahomes was 5-0 against the AFC West this year. When you look at the rest of the AFC, Buffalo, when you win 15 games, that's usually a really good safe zone to get the number 1 seed. Buffalo was right behind Kansas City this season, and the Chiefs had to not only get 15 wins, but they were able to clinch that with a week to spare in the season. But Buffalo was right behind the Chiefs in this one. So Kansas City was able to get that with a week to spare, but Buffalo was right behind them. So winning the division and the conference in the regular season, obviously winning the AFC this year, nothing was easy about it. I mean, the Texans, their defense has been really good all year long. The Bills, they beat the Chiefs earlier in the season, but the Chiefs got the number 1 seed, and the Chiefs got them back at home the second time around this season. So it wasn't an easy year to win the division nor the conference. And the division, of course, both the Broncos and the Chargers made it. They both made big improvements this season. And I think, the Raiders, I don't think the Raiders are going to make drastic improvements, but I think having Pete Carroll as your head coach is certainly a starting point, 100%. So, don't expect any offensive coaching changes. And I think I saw Dan comment on this. Nagy and Mahomes are very close. We never saw Mahomes and Bieniemy out and about for high school games and whatnot. Obviously, Nagy's son plays high school football at Blue Valley Southwest, or did rather, because he's moving on to KU. But yeah, this is not a team that's going to make drastic coaching changes just because of one bad look in the Super Bowl. I know the argument can be, hey, it's not just one loss in the Super Bowl. The offense has looked different for a while now, really since Nagy took over. Yeah, I don't disagree. And I think that's a huge reason why these changes need to be made, specifically with offensive coordinator, but don't expect it. And again, I think if Mahomes has something to say about it and his word holds a lot of weight within the organization, Nagy's staying. And I don't like that. I've always said I don't like when players have a say in things. I don't care if you're Mahomes, Brady, LeBron, those types of players. A player should let coaches make coaching decisions, let the front office make front office decisions. I don't think a superstar athlete should ever have a say in those kinds of things. I don't care how good you are. Just not something I've ever supported, in my opinion. What positions will Kansas City target this offseason in free agency and the draft? Maybe a couple of re-signings could solve some of these woes here. Obviously, left tackle is number 1 on everybody's list. I think followed by cornerback. Jalen Watson didn't do bad. Certainly still growing, you can tell. But I think they would maybe like to have something a little bit better there. Maybe a better slot cornerback, because the Chiefs let a lot of slot receivers open this year, especially on third down. Running back, let me explain this one here, because there were a lot of people asking about this one. A lot of people said, why would you pick running back when the team has Pacheco, Hunt, Pirine, and Steele? Well, first of all, what did Carson Steele do other than the Denver game? I mean, how many times did he touch the ball in the second half of the season outside of the Denver game? So, man, listen, I liked what Carson Steele did in the preseason, but we didn't really see much else from him afterwards outside of a few fumbles here and there and a couple of short yardage runs. And when Kareem Hunt joined, Kareem Hunt kind of took away the short yardage role from Carson Steele. Samaje Perine certainly was a good pass catching running back. Started to kind of pick things up a little bit towards the end of the season. And Pacheco, I mean, Pacheco's got great speed, but here's a problem. Pacheco's dealt with a lot of injuries in his career. After Super Bowl 57, when the Chiefs beat the Eagles, he had surgery on his wrist and on his shoulder, if I'm not mistaken. It was elbow, shoulder, or wrist, 2 of those 3. And then he had the ankle injury this year. Pacheco's kind of he's dealt with a lot of injuries in his young career, which is obviously a concern, especially at that running back position. Kareem Hunt, I've always said this, and I stand by this. Kareem Hunt did provide a nice little boost for the offense when the Chiefs needed it at a very desperate time, dealing with all these injuries to Hollywood, Pacheco, Rice. Kareem Hunt comes in. Now, Kareem Hunt came in before the Rashee Rice injury, but you didn't realize how much more valuable he was going to be in that Chargers game and from beyond at that point. He averaged 3.6 yards per carry, which isn't good. So Kansas City's got to, I think you got the point of this offseason. What can you do to take some of the workload and pressure off Patrick Mahomes' shoulders? Because I think Patrick Mahomes, and listen, he didn't have a great Super Bowl. Not at all. In fact, it was terrible. But you got to give this guy credit, because even with the bad offensive tackle play the last 3 years, last 3 to 4 years, which again has been abysmal, Patrick Mahomes has still done a lot to put the team in position to win. It's not easy to do. There are very, very, very few quarterbacks that will still find a way to do things with a bad offensive line. Joe Burrow is another good example of it. But if Kansas City can solve the woes at offensive tackle, specifically the left tackle, I think you're going to see a different Patrick Mahomes moving forward. Patrick Mahomes never had an all-pro left tackle in his career. Now, you don't have to have an all-pro, but would it be nice to have a top 10 left tackle? Sure. Eric Fisher, I mean, he wasn't a top-tier left tackle, but he was good and got better at the tail end of his career, which was the early part of Patrick Mahomes' career. So there are some things to figure out there. As far as left tackles to consider out there, you have Ronnie Stanley, Cam Robinson allowed a lot of pressures and sacks, though 52 pressures, second most in the NFL, and 7 sacks. But as far as PFF's pass blocking grade goes, it is a 70.4, still fairly high for whatever it's worth to you. Tyron Smith of the Jets played in 10 games, allowed 5 sacks, so not quite great there. Cornelius Lucas, kind of an older guy. He'll be 34 years old by the time the season starts. But in the 11 games he played, he only allowed 1 sack and 12 pressures. That's not bad. Almost 1 pressure per game. Not bad at all. Kelvin Beachum from the Cardinals, another good option there. 15 games played, 4 sacks allowed, 16 pressures. Not bad, all things considered there. But he will be 36 at the start of the season. So he'll be up there in age, but I guess it'd be still an upgrade over what you have. As far as left tackles, you do have, obviously the ideal situation would be to have Joe Thuney go back to his original position. Thuney can do well at left tackle, but eventually, he kind of struggled against Myles Garrett in the second half of that Cleveland game and had some problems against some of the top-tier pass rushers, and the Chiefs faced a lot of them in the playoffs. And in the Super Bowl, it certainly turned out to be a problem. So the ideal situation would be to have Joe Thuney move back to left guard and get someone else. Well, unfortunately, the guys that you have drafted in recent years in the 3rd round and the 1st round, guys like Wanye Morris, Kingsley Suamataia, trading for Orlando Brown a while back, getting Donovan Smith in free agency. I mean, the Chiefs have tried so many different things, and none of them have worked. Ever since you let Eric Fisher go, none of them have really worked out for Kansas City. So they've got to figure out the left tackle spot. It's funny. I got a couple comments from Bengals fans. Oh, how's letting Orlando Brown walk? You're really going to ask that? I mean, last I checked, Orlando Brown, his first year with the Bengals, led the NFL in pressures. Not good. And this year, what did he miss? 5, 6, 7 games. So he's definitely overpaid. The Bengals gave him the highest paid guaranteed money in NFL history for an offensive tackle. So that's not good. That is not good. That's the money he wanted. He was certainly not worth the money. Orlando Brown is an older version of Kingsley Suamataia. That's it. And Kingsley Suamataia is a younger version of Orlando Brown. So the Chiefs, I mean, they've got they're just not overpaying Kingsley, I guess, because he's on a rookie deal. But they've got to figure it out. They have got to figure it out. Maybe Kingsley plays interior offensive line. Maybe plays at the guard spot. Who knows? We'll see, but that is something to consider. Got to figure it out. Got to figure it out. And I think as far as running backs go, keep in mind, Kareem Hunt and Samaje Perine, they're both without contracts right now. Obviously, it's very early. We can see some changes. We did see Raheem Mostert was let go. Is that someone who they could bring in? Possibly. Wouldn't surprise me if the Chiefs had some interest in Raheem Mostert. But Kansas City needs to get a running back that can help provide a little bit of a balance. I know this will always be a pass-first team, and I get that. But it doesn't hurt to have a top 10 type of running back on this team. They had that with Kareem Hunt, his first stint in Kansas City. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had moments where he looked like a top-tier running back. I remember his rookie season, he had more rushing yards than everybody not named Derrick Henry in 2020. And then the following year, he was in the top 10 in rushing yards up until his injury. So Kansas City has had flashes from running backs, but nothing too consistent. Pacheco looked like he was going to be the guy, but obviously he'd been dealing with some injuries and had his lowest yard per carry average, had a very poor showing in the post. Honestly, it's been 2 postseasons in a row where Pacheco has been very quiet in the playoffs, and that's not really a good thing. Kareem Hunt, I'd like to see him get one more chance, especially because how good he was in those short yardage situations for the most part. At 30 years old, that could be a challenge. Who knows? We'll see what the Chiefs want to do right there. Real quickly, before I get to your guys' questions, I do want to just point out real quickly about the parade with the Eagles in Philadelphia. For those who don't know, there was a shooting that happened at Philadelphia. No deaths reported, at least not yet, but 2 have been shot. I mean, it's not being talked about because it wasn't anything like last year's where one person had died and almost a dozen kids were sent to the hospital. So it's kind of going under the radar. Not a lot of people are discussing it. I still remember all the sports stations and all the mainstream cable news channels, they immediately flipped over to parade coverage because of what happened. I don't know, man. I'm not here to make things political or talk about gun laws and all that shit because none of that helps anything. Doesn't really. I don't know, man. I mean, I hate to say that, but because it's just the actions of 1, 2, just a couple of bad guys here who do these things, but those 1 or 2 bad guys are enough to kind of put us in position where we might no longer have celebratory moments like this anymore. I mean, the Chiefs, Kansas City specifically, they actually had a plan in place. And listen, you have to plan for these things. You cannot just wait for the game to be over, believe it or not. It's a lot like, printing apparel. Those have to be ready in advance. Kansas City had a plan, and they were going to nix the rally, which is always the fun part of these parades. Obviously, we never saw that play out and how it was going to look, but I don't know, man. This is just not a good look for the sports world, specifically Super Bowl parades. And then, Philly fans fighting. One guy has a baby in his arms and people are fighting. What's going on, man? I mean, come on. You got a big Super Bowl win. You should be celebrating it, not fighting one another. Jesus Christ. But that's really all I have to say about that specific thing. So it's a bad look. I mean, it's pretty sad. Hopefully the 2 people who are shot are okay and will survive and that their injuries are very minimal. We'll have to see what happens there. All right. Now, enough of me. Time to go to your guys' questions here. Jim is going to start things off here. Do you think we will get Devin Neal? If so, I don't have a problem with it. And are we retaining Perine? Yeah, we don't know yet. It's obviously the first week. Very, very few teams have made moves. In fact, I think in terms of re-signing players, I think the only player who's re-signed is Clyde Edwards-Helaire with the Saints. So this is just kind of getting started. The Chiefs have a lot to figure out. And I know there was another question later. Someone was asking the salary cap. It is roughly $11 million. It would be helpful if I had that pulled up here. Now, it's not going to stay at $11 million. Obviously, the Chiefs will work on some deals, restructure that and whatnot, and put the Chiefs in position to where they can make some moves in the offseason. Let me see what the public salary cap report states from the NFLPA. Says the Chiefs are at 3 million, but is that for 2024 or 2025? Let me just quickly check Spot Track. Because all these websites can be a little different, which is odd, but yeah, total cap space now is 5.3 million. Over the cap says it went from 11 million to saying 916,000. So I don't know how that happened or when that became the case. I don't think there was an announcement within the last 30 minutes. Yeah, I don't see it. The Bears, actually, this came out just before. The Bears did add Sways Bozeman, former Chiefs linebacker, to their roster on the future reserves list. So there's that. That came out right before we went live. But anyway, as far as the Devin Neal question goes, as a K, you guys certainly would not mind that. Devin Neal, I think, would be very good in Andy Reid's offense. Cam Scatterbo, I know, is a very popular name out there as well, especially after the type of game he had for Arizona State against Texas in the college playoff game. So, look, there's a lot to figure out. Retaining Pirine, I don't know. It's hard to say. There's a lot that's going to happen in the next couple of weeks. I am very curious to see how it all pans out. So it's really hard to say all of that right now. And this is another good question here from Gay. So you think we will try to re-sign D-Hop or Hollywood or let them both walk? I think I would love for Hopkins to stay because Kansas City's turnovers did go down a lot with Hopkins, but he didn't really get involved much. I mean, his snap count was very, very low. Hollywood is someone who really got involved with Patrick Mahomes in the offseason with OTAs and training camp, and we never saw it play out in the season because Hollywood got hurt on the first snap. Part of me thinks Hollywood is someone that the Chiefs are going to try to keep. He already signed for a cheap deal last year, and I think the goal was for him to have a good season. That way he could get a bigger deal, whether it was in Kansas City or elsewhere. And that might be a bad thing for Kansas City. So I don't know. That's a very difficult one. It's hard to say what Hollywood and his agent are going to be demanding as the same for Hopkins, especially with his agent not really pulling through like a lot of people thought. Brad, I see you pointing out a couple of names here from college. Now people are saying got paid off to throw the Super Bowl. Listen, all 32 fan bases, and again, I said all 32 fan bases, so that includes Kansas City, they all complain whenever their team does not win about the game, the refs, whatever. I remember when the Chiefs lost to the Bengals in the AFC title game, there were a lot of Chiefs fans on Facebook saying that Mahomes threw the game and that he was paid to throw it. Okay. I mean, it was bad enough to where Patrick Mahomes' stepmom actually spoke out about this on her social media. So not Randy Mahomes, the stepmom, just to be very clear. I believe her name is Trisha Mahomes, married to Pat Sr. Mahomes' stats are just not as good on Nagy. He's just not that good. No, he's not. And we kind of went over that. It's certainly the numbers are down. Do you think the Chiefs could land Chase Young in free agency? I don't know. That's a good one right there. I'd like to have him. He's a good edge rusher, but I don't know. I don't think. I think the Chiefs will target an edge rusher in free agency, but I don't think it'll be a top tier edge rusher because that's going to be way too much money. I mean, defensive ends and outside linebackers are getting a lot of money, and it's money that the Chiefs do not have and cannot afford to spend it on right now. What player will the Chiefs draft in the first round, left tackle or wide receiver? I'm going to go left tackle. I don't think you need a wide receiver. I know Rice is going to be on the shelf a little longer because of the suspension, though it would give him a little bit more time to recover from his knee injury. And then Worthy making that big step up from year 1 to year 2. Hopefully Hollywood comes back. Wouldn't surprise me if McCole Hardman was brought back on a cheap deal, and Sky Moore, you keep him because he's still on a rookie deal. Would not surprise me on any of that. So I would have to say they go for a left tackle in the draft if they don't find one in free agency. And the left tackle I had the Chiefs in my mock draft was the guy from Oregon, Josh Connerly Jr. So, and he would need to kind of have a miracle fall to be available at 31. So if the Chiefs want him, my guess would be realistically they would have to trade up to get him. What free agents do you feel Casey needs to bring back? By the way, thank you for using the correct hyphen there. I'm seeing a lot of people say resign. Guys, there's a major difference between resign and resign. A major difference. I even see a lot of reporters, people in the media get this wrong on their Twitter. Okay. As far as players they need to bring back, I think Trey Smith is someone you got to really think about bringing back, though he might be out of your money range there. That might not be within the budget. So if he cannot come back, maybe Nick Bolton. Though, do you really want to pay a linebacker that much money when you have Leo Chenal and Drew Tranquil? I know that's a very scary question to ask to Chiefs fans because a lot of Chiefs fans are Mizzou fans. But I just don't know if the Chiefs have the funds to make that work when they've got a lot of other things to address. Because I think the Chiefs could either use Hunter Norzad or Kingsley Suamataia at right guard. They liked what they saw from him in left guard. It was a few snaps, but looked good doing that. Might experiment with him there. Do you think the Chiefs will sign T. Higgins? No. I know that was put out there by one of the ESPN panels on First Take or whatever. No. He has way too much money. And rightfully so. He's due for a big payday. I think, by the way, he is going to stay in Cincinnati. What is Cincinnati doing? I mean, they have all these premier players who want big deals, and because they waited too long, like Jamar Chase and Trey Hendrickson, to give them the deals that they wanted, and now those guys are in prime position to hit the jackpot, essentially. That was a big criticism of John Dorsey. He waited too long to extend Eric Berry and Justin Houston. And when he waited, they both had their best years ever. And so you had to make them the highest paid players at their positions. So, I mean, listen, I don't think the Bengals are losing T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Trey Hendrickson, but why are you not paying them already? That's what's confusing to me. I personally get sick of all the haters, but I love it when they cry. Yeah, don't we all? Is Travis retiring? It's a good question here. Will he retire? I don't think he's going to go out like that. But his lack of effort in a couple of plays this year have not been good. The poor pass blocking against the Raiders on the Black Friday game, wide open Xavier Worthy, but Mahomes was under duress and he couldn't hit Worthy on target there. Had the play that went viral against the Eagles on the Super Bowl. That was not a good look for him. I mean, I don't know. When you see a player like that, retirement, obviously retirement is on his mind. He made that very clear on the podcast, but I don't know. It's just, he's obviously getting older and the numbers are slowly going down. He's still a top five tight end when it comes to receptions and yards, but he is, slowly regressing. And again, so the effort on some plays is not good. It's not a good look. I really don't know. I hate to give this kind of answer because it's such a cop-out answer and it's so easy to give, but I am going to go 50-50 on that one. I really do not know what he's going to do. Let's see. Anyone else going through football withdrawals? No, Corey. Listen, it's always a long season for the Chiefs because they always start training camp earlier than anyone else, and they play into the Super Bowl every year, 3 years in a row now, almost every year. Listen, as soon as the Super Bowl is over, I'm like, okay, great. I can relax. Sundays, I am ready to just chill and watch movies. Sure, I mentioned this before. I'm knocking stuff off my list, my must-watch list. Should the team look for a new right tackle? How much cap space will they gain from dropping Taylor, and how much money will they eat? According to Over the Cap, dead money prior to June 1st, and I think it would be the same after June 1st. No, it'd be a little different actually. If it's pre-June 1st, they'll have almost $35 million in dead money, but they will save almost $7.4 million in cap savings. Yeah, it's not good. That is not good. Yeah, I mean, he certainly did not have a good Super Bowl, and pass protection is part of it, but it wasn't like that every single play. I mean, he just had issues of his own in that one. Those 2 picks were not due to a pass rush or anything. Pretty sure Reed is smarter than all of us, and he likes Nagy. That being said, I'm not a Nagy fan either. Yeah. No, I'm with you. I mean, listen, these coaches, they're in their positions for a reason, but that doesn't mean they're always right. And I'm always very cautious, kind of like you, Jason, on these kinds of things, to make sure that, we're not criticizing these guys on things we cannot do. But there are some obvious stuff. It's like, wait a minute, this coach just isn't getting it done. They're just not. Matt Nagy isn't going anywhere. Mahomes, yeah, for sure. And we already went over that, so I won't dive into that too much. Why no one is telling Pat about his field vision and footwork? I don't know what that means, Harold. Elaborate if you would, please, because I'm sure whatever Mahomes needs to work on is being addressed by his trainers, his team, all of that. What is it going to take to get the high-powered offense back? Kind of an obvious answer there. I would have to say a good left tackle would certainly help, and I think a running back to help provide a little bit of a balance there and take pressure off Patrick Mahomes' shoulders. For those who missed it earlier, I said at the start of the live stream, this offseason, you got to figure out what can you do to help take some pressure off Patrick Mahomes. That I think is something this offense needs to figure out. What can you do to make life easy for Patrick Mahomes? Offensive performances take the last 2 years. The season record doesn't tell the story. I agree with that, Pharaoh. An offensive line who give them time to throw the deep ball to our talented receivers. Yeah, for sure. And I think, Worthy and Mahomes, they've been trying to figure that out as the season's gone along. Players don't make good general managers. Aaron Rodgers is a prime example. Yeah. Where is it? There, that one. That's what I was looking for. Yeah, I just because here's the thing about the Jets, who are obviously moving on from Aaron Rodgers, and obviously they got trolled because they said thank you for the last 2 years, and people are like, what did he give you the last 2 years? The Jets just did anything and everything Aaron Rodgers wanted, and look where that got them. I mean, listen, I'm sure there are things where, like Mahomes saying, can we run WASP? Obviously, Mahomes had the right call there. But I don't know, man. I just think in general, like, I'm not a fan of when superstar players, chime in on who the team should draft. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of it. Justin Reed wrote a cryptic message to the fans about how he loves Kansas City and the Chiefs. I did see that, Antoinette, and I did share that. listen, I think a lot of these guys are just, giving their thanks because they know there's a possibility that the Super Bowl could have been their last game as a Chief. I said in the offseason, I said, we could see a lot of turnover in the 2025 offseason. I've mentioned that you can see it from a mile away. There are a lot of free agents. There are going to be a lot of fan favorites that might move on. Guys like Justin Reed, guys like Trey Smith, guys like Nick Bolton, Kareem Hunt, Hopkins, Hollywood. I mean, even though some of those guys were on the team for a very short amount of time, not even a full year, I think fans just fell in love with them because of their history or what they were expecting from them. Obviously, with Hunt coming back, I don't know. It's very, very difficult I'm a big Vegas Golden Knights fan. And I still remember their first year, the group they had, a very special group, obviously got to the Stanley Cup Finals their first year in the 2017-2018 season. But when you get to a Stanley Cup, you obviously have a lot of great players, but the turnover can happen real fast. And I think the year the Vegas Golden Knights won their Stanley Cup was in year 6. And there were only 6 players from the first season. They called themselves the original Misfits. Dude, the turnover in sports happens so fast. It really does go by fast. I guarantee you, Patriots fans will tell you the 18 years with Brady went by so fast, and that these last few years, feel like an eternity. I mean, there's no way they would say otherwise. Between Pacheco and Hunt, keep Hunt. Pacheco's under contract, and he's on a rookie deal for a 7th round pick, by the way. So he is a very cheap guy to keep. And I'm saying that because Kansas City they don't have a lot of room with the salary cap. I mean, there's a lot to work on there. We have to remember we get quality and great players in the 3rd round and later. Say Hunt should stay, trade Pacheco. Ravens suggesting, yeah. And listen, the Chiefs certainly have found guys in later rounds. You mentioned the 3rd round, and here's a nice little transition here to Robert's comment. Jamal Charles was a 3rd round pick, and yeah, I mean we haven't had a consistent running back since Jamal Charles for sure. Yeah, CEH. Listen, CEH, I don't think he got the credit he truly deserved during his time in Kansas City. But being available, and as far as playmaking ability, that kind of consistency was a problem with CEH. So unfortunately, he was just a bust for a 1st round pick. A full offseason would be, like with Hopkins, would be fantastic. Yeah, that certainly would help. Pacheco just be running into linemen sometimes. I love Pop, but his vision just isn't good. No. He certainly had issues with that. And again, what was his yard per carry average this year? Because it was not very good. It was the lowest it's ever been. That was a 3.7 yard per carry average. And I think he had like a 4.4 or a 4.3 going into a game in December. And CBS pointed out like that's the lowest of his career. Obviously a short career because he got drafted in 22, but still, I mean, a guy with his speed and his ability, that was kind of a surprise. He averaged 4.9 yards a carry his rookie year, 4.6 last year, 3.7, almost a whole yard down. And I know he only played 7 games, got hurt in one of them, but man, it just wasn't really the most successful season for Pacheco. Kansas City's got to figure out the running game out 100%. What did they average as a team when they ran the ball? Average exactly 4 yards a carry. Kareem Hunt averaged 3.6. Pacheco 3.7. Mahomes 5.3 with the scrambling. Carson Seal 3.3. Worthy 5.2. P. Ryan 4.6. P. Ryan averaged more than 4 yards a carry. He only ran 20 times. I hardly remember. I do remember his touchdown run. He only had one of those, and that was against the Chargers. McCole averaged 12.6 off 5 handoffs. And yeah, that's really it in terms of guys worth mentioning. Jaden Hicks averaged 1 yard per run. What run did he have? When did Jaden Hicks run with the ball? Unless he picked up a fumble off a lateral, maybe? But that would count as return yards, not rushing yards. Why does Jaden Hicks have a rushing yard? Does anyone know why Jaden Hicks has a rushing yard? Yeah, that is puzzling to me. I don't know why. Yeah, there's a weird thing where NFL teams with 15 or more wins have never won a Super Bowl. The Lions and the Chiefs this year, the Patriots had it several years ago in that 16-0 season. Yeah, no team has ever won a Super Bowl by winning 15 games in the regular season. Is that a coincidence? Is there maybe some sort of a correlation there where if you don't lose, and I'm only counting one loss because let's not pretend like the second loss meant anything, but there was only one true loss to really learn from. Listen, I'm not saying you can't ever learn from your wins, but you learn a lot more and you're more determined coming off a loss than coming off a win. I remember, and listen, I don't think fans realize this. When players come in for film study after a game, coaches are not celebrating. They're ripping them up and telling them everything they can do to improve. I remember Charlie Weiss, his very first game with KU, they won, the only win of the season. I remember asking him one time, I said, what was the feeling like to be able to get that first win of the season for the players? He said, as soon as they came in, they were all hyped up and happy. We brought their mood down when we did film study with them. And I know Charlie Weiss was not a successful head coach at Notre Dame or at KU, but the guy knows his football. I mean, he's won several Super Bowl rings with the Patriots. So that guy knows football still at the end of the day. I mean, if he does it, a lot of other coaches in college and in the NFL are doing the same thing. Notice every time there's a get together, something like that happens. I hate to say it, makes you sad. Listen, there are people out there who don't want to attend these kinds of things because they worry about how easy it is to commit such an act, and want to hurt as many people as they can. Now, the Chiefs parade one, the shooting incident, that was at the parking garage, as far as we know, and even the details are still very, very weird. Like it's a secret. We don't know everything that happened, but at the end of the day, it did happen. Happened 2 years in a row now, and that is not good. If you could have one scenario play out your way next season for the Chiefs and one other team, what would you want to happen? This is a little bit of a weird question, Raymond. I mean, if I can have one thing happen to the Chiefs, it would be to win the Super Bowl, I guess. I assume you mean free agency. I mean, get the best left tackle available. That's what I would say. Does the salary cap roll over? No, Lori, it does not. It does not roll over from previous years. No. You use it or you lose it. I agree with you, Matthew. I do agree with you. I'd be surprised if the Chiefs were to get back. Listen, I said all year long, I want the three-peat to happen, not just because of history and whatnot. Like, that's great. But on top of that, the Chiefs are probably going to go on a hiatus with these deep runs because there's going to be a lot of turnover. Tom Brady and the Patriots, they went 10 years from the third Super Bowl win to the fourth Super Bowl win. I don't think it'll be that long for Mahomes, but that's one of those situations where it's like, you got to understand now, especially with the cap, and I think Mahomes is at fault for this as well. You got to make sure you're making enough money to where, I get it. Listen, the Mahomes family, if we're just being honest here, they live a very luxurious lifestyle. They have bodyguards. They have several cars and three houses. I think Brittany once mentioned. Brittany once mentioned they have 7 cars and 3 houses, and that was a couple of years ago. That has probably changed by now. And obviously bodyguards, that's never cheap either. And they also fly privately. You will never see them in the halls of KCI Airport or at any of the gates there. You will never see them on Delta, Southwest American, JetBlue. You'll never see them on any of those, and those are not cheap flights. So they do live a very luxurious lifestyle. So I get Mahomes wanting all that money there, but if you want someone to protect your damn blind side, you're going to have to continue to be willing to restructure. And I know the Chiefs have continued to do that. It can come back eventually to hurt the team cap-wise. And look, it's a great problem to have, I suppose, because the Chiefs just keep drafting very well. And they've had to settle with the fact that they can't bring back some guys like Tyrann Mathieu, Tyreek Hill, L'Jarius Sneed. Do I think it's a possibility the Chiefs trade Chris Jones? No. Oh, before the end of his contract? I mean, he's going to be in his mid-30s by then, so that's not a very enticing trade to make, Chris. So I don't think so. I mean, what are you going to get for him realistically at that point? I don't know. Oh, yeah. Everyone does. Everyone does. Chiefs fans, non-Chiefs fans, everyone does it. Yeah, Jared Wiley obviously got hurt. There was a lot of hype surrounding him when he came in. I just don't think a lot of people expected to see Noah Gray step up the way he did. There is a possibility Gray and Wiley could be your top 2 tight ends next year. That's on the table for sure. Worthy looked like a star wide receiver in the Super Bowl. Year 2 is going to be special. Listen, I don't want to take anything away from Worthy. And I get there are garbage time stats, and a lot of what Worthy did was in garbage time. Yes, there were still some Philly starters on the field when he was scoring one of those touchdowns and getting some of those yards. But in general, I mean, I can't really look too much into that because they were still playing fairly laxed. It's not like they were aggressively trying to keep the Chiefs out of the end zone. They didn't care. The game was already written. I guarantee a lot of the beat writers had their stories written and ready to publish right at the end of the game. I do agree year 2 is going to be special. Hey, listen, to go back to the garbage time stuff, look, man, I get it. There are 60 minutes in the game. There's no mercy rule, so you have to play it out. And that's what the Chiefs did. They played it out all the way to the very last second. So I'm not going to shame any of these players for that. I'm sure when you look at NFL history, when you look at someone's single season best when it comes to rushing yards, touchdowns, whatever, I'm sure there are some record holders who got some of their stats in garbage time. I mean, you can't go back and do anything about that. So just the way it all works out sometimes. Wouldn't letting Moore go free up some cap space? Not too much. Let me just pull that up real quickly. Yeah, your dead money would be 467,000 and cap space would be $1.5 million. You're not really saving $1.5 million is a lot of money. I want to be very clear about that. In NFL standards, those are pennies and nickels. It's really not much. It's really not. So you're not really saving much by letting Sky go. I do agree with you, Raymond. I mean, if he's staying, you got to restructure it. I like the $19.8 million cap hit. Yeah, that's not good for a guy who's not really putting up the numbers he once was putting up. And I get it. Kelsey was never demanding a lot of money during his dominance. He was always willing to play for less. So I suppose this is kind of like the makeup for those years. So I'd be surprised if anything changed with him. Do I see Carson Steele going? I don't know. I know the Chiefs really liked him and wanted, even though they didn't use him, they still wanted him to stick around on the team because they felt like if he were to get waived and if they attempted to bring him back to the practice squad, then he would have been snagged by another team. because you never saw Carson Steele go to the practice squad this year. He was on the team the whole time because they were afraid somebody else was going to get him. I think Travis will come back for one more year. I heard Travis doesn't want to go out like that. Yeah. They did last year. I do know that. Already watching hockey. Yep. I've made that transition as well. It's hard for me to focus on the Golden Knights and and KU during the season. Football season, that is. Once football season's over, it's like, okay, now I can. I mean, don't get me wrong. I still watch the games, just not invested into it so much until football season's over. Just scrolling along here. Don't mind me. Hire Mike Munchak for offensive line coach, Daniel says. Yeah. Yeah, maybe. Trade key defensive players for quality offensive tackles. I know that's wishful thinking, with left tackle being one of the hardest positions to fill. Okay, Sean, let me ask you this. What would you trade? Because honestly, if we're going to do it that way, the way you're suggesting, I suppose it's doable. You would have to restructure Kelsey if he stays, Mahomes and Jawan Taylor. Then you could re-sign Trey Smith. And then you could tag and trade Nick Bolton. That's the only way I see that happening. By the way, don't forget, McDuffie and Karlaftis, they're not free agents, but they're both eligible for new contracts. And the Chiefs could use the 50-year option on them. There's a lot Brett Veach has to worry about this year. A lot. Listen, I'm not saying Trent McDuffie and George Karlaftis are not team players, but everyone's got to look out for themselves. I would not be surprised if those guys decided to skip some of OTAs and training camp, because if they're on the last year of their rookie contracts, they probably want to make sure they don't risk injury, because if they risk injury, they're not going to hit a big contract next offseason, whether it's here or elsewhere. Maybe. I mean, I think he proved he still got something left in the tank, but he was available too. That's another thing to consider. We need another receiver with speed that can create separation. I mean, if you bring back Hollywood, I think he can help alleviate that need. That needs to be the main focus, I think. Making sure Mahomes is protected and has a great running back, or guys open to throw plus the running game. Yeah, and I think if you have a good running game, that can certainly help with the play action and get guys open. That would be very instrumental. It certainly helps out teams like not the Giants, the new team that Saquon's on, the Eagles, the Ravens, the Bills. I mean, they've got great running backs, and they use those guys to help open up the passing game by using play action. That's what you do with every great running back. Even Tim Grunhard thinks we should go in a different direction with O-line coach. Interesting. Okay. And, you know, I do appreciate Tim Grunhard's honesty. I know he's very well connected with the organization. And I think when you're connected with the team, the non-written rule is you don't say negative things about the current staff. But Grunhard's not going to hold back, man. He's never a guy to sugarcoat. Yeah, no, you're right, Mickey. He did. Yeah, that's what I think, Daniel. They just haven't been dominant. That's why I put running back as a position of need. A lot of people did not like that. And again, I know a lot of people love Pacheco and Hunt. I do too. But Kansas City needs a little something else there. They really do. Foresee a season like Super Bowl 50 after 55, where you missed 56 but made it to 57. I think the hiatus might be a little longer, Chris, but I could see that. A similarity, something like that. Mahomes cruising around in that State Farm corporate jet. Yeah, exactly. Um, I know Brittany does not tweet anymore, and I know in general, like she used to do Q and A's and whatnot. She has certainly toned down her social media presence. Maybe a big part of it is because she's a mom now of multiple kids. I mean, there could be a lot of things. I think part of it is she's learned to maybe just not do much of that anymore. I get it, especially with the negativity and the hate she gets. But she has opened up about the luxury that they have again with the cars, the houses. She's never really addressed this, but the private plane, which you kind of were just talking about there, Robert. um I remember Brittany went back to her home state in Texas to surprise her family or her friends. I don't remember exactly what it was, but she is filming herself, stepping on to the private jet and getting on. I mean, it's nice that she's going out there flying out. And I don't get me wrong, they earned it. They have the money for it, but it does cost a lot. And maybe that's why Mahomes is not willing to take a big pay cut. He would still make a lot of money, but would you make enough to be able to afford all the luxury that you have? I know. I mean, listen, I know you guys are not dumb. You guys can find, everyone knows where Patrick Mahomes lives. Everyone knows where his previous home was. Everyone knows where his new home is. Um, and they showed off their home on the Netflix series, The Quarterback Show. That is a damn big house. They have a full size basketball court there. Um, yeah, those things are not cheap, y'all. Rich people problems. Are the Chiefs in the hook for any of Kelsey's salary if he retires? No. If you retire, then there's no year. What's a fifth-year option? It's kind of like a franchise tag, but only for players that were drafted in the first round. So if you use the fifth-year option, and I think you have to decide it right before their fourth season starts, sometime during that offseason. I don't know the exact date. Yes, Lori, it is Andy Heck. But yeah, the fifth-year option has to be used at some point during the offseason before the fourth year starts. But it's basically like a franchise tag, but you can only use it on first-round draft picks. Basically, what it does is you keep him for the fourth year, and they'll be paid very handsomely for that fifth year. I love Todd. I appreciate you commenting. I mean, I don't think you realize this, but maybe you do. I mean, I'm sure you're a smart individual, but when you comment excessively on someone else's post that you don't like, they do have a bag full of money, and that only grows the more you comment on it. So please, Todd, keep commenting. Keep telling me I suck. I love when people are like, Farzine, there are so many negative comments. Why do you not ban them? Do you guys get or ever see how many negative comments I get personally? I mean, I don't read them as much as I used to, but I mean, come on. I don't even give a damn about those. I just let all those comments go. And I love when Eagles fans, I mean, we're not seeing much of it tonight. I love when Eagles fans are listening to this podcast or live stream. Do you guys not have an Eagles podcast to listen to? I mean, are the options for Eagles podcasts not very good? Yeah, but Laura, even to rent them, I mean, it's pricey. It is very, very pricey. I've looked it up before, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think like the cheapest to rent for a flight is like 37 grand. Yeah. They don't have bodyguards. Mike is saying on Instagram. Oh, they do. They do. If you actually go back and look at the parade last year, Patrick Mahomes, when he's running around, high-fiving and kissing everybody, he's got three guys right behind him. When Mahomes runs, they run with him. Those are not, chief security. Those are his bodyguards. Brittany, she was also running around high-fiving, dancing, kissing people. and there was a bodyguard right behind her the whole time. Whenever there's one clip of her running up to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, hugging and high-fiving him. When she ran up to him, the bodyguard was running right behind Brittany. I mean, they've got bodyguards. There are a lot of non-Chiefs fans. Listen, I've always said non-Chiefs fans are always welcome. I mean, I don't stick to just Chiefs talk. I have a lot of, we talk a lot of things. Chiefs, obviously, a majority of the conversation. So yeah, I mean, everyone's welcome. I just think it's funny when you think I love when people are like, oh, I'm going to troll you. Okay. Hey, please keep trolling me. Do whatever you want to do to raise that engagement. We need to be much better in the trenches next season. That's where yeah, you're right, Matthew. I mean, that's where the game is won and lost many times. And people talk about turnovers, and that certainly is a big factor. Don't get me wrong, but I think a lot of fans just underestimate the importance of winning the battle at the line of scrimmage. Big time. That's nothing to them. 37,000 plus Brittany can make a lot of money doing yeah, but Lori, no, I mean, listen, 37 may sound like nothing to them, but when they travel as much as they do, and listen, not to get too personal into their lives, but it's very easy to find what they're wearing. There are a lot of Google inverse images you can use, and you can find the exact item of clothing that they have on. For example, I remember Patrick Mahomes. Now, Brittany has posted some of the clothes online. Patrick had a coat at one of the parades that a lot of people liked. My brother has a very similar coat just like that. It was only like $150, $200, something like that. Patrick had a very similar look. It looked exactly the same. It was $4,000. Like, that's how much their clothes are. Again, I'm not shaming them for it. That's their money. They earn that. They can do whatever they want. But, you know, every bit, whether it's Patrick's football contract, his endorsement deals, Brittany's Instagram ads, as you mentioned, Lori, all of that matters. Every single dollar, it all adds up. And obviously they want to be taken care of afterwards. I'm sure Mahomes will be doing something when his playing career is over. But obviously may not be making as much money after he retires. So you gotta be, you gotta be careful with all of that stuff. That's all I'm saying. It's like, okay, you use a private plane once, but if you're traveling frequently, and they do, judging by their social media, yeah, the price of that adds up for sure. That's a good question, Rochelle. Why were their homes not secured when they are playing? Home was probably being secured by Kingsley Suamataia for all we know. I'm kidding. It's just a joke, people. I made a very similar joke with Joe Burrow's home invasion. I said that Orlando Brown was protecting the house. It was a fucking joke, Bengals fans. Like, chill the fuck out. The same Bengals fans would have loved it if I made a very similar joke about Mahomes and his offensive line. Like, calm down. It's a harmless joke. Bengals fan, a lot of football fans love to dish it, but can't take it. It's like, really, come on. Don't be such a wuss. Anyway, to answer your question, I don't know, Rochelle. That's a really good question, because I am very certain they live in a gated community. And so does Kelsey. In fact, I'm actually familiar with the neighborhood Kelsey, where he's at, because I've been there before, a long time ago, but I've been there before. So, yeah, I think they're still trying to look into all of that stuff. I know the people who went into Burrow's home, I guess a selfie was leaked of them. I don't know if that's real or not. I haven't really looked into that too much, but I have seen that. And I believe they're minors, so I can't really post that photo anyway because of alleged criminal activity. And again, it's kind of obvious, but you still have to say alleged. But yeah, I think they're still investigating that, Rochelle. Yeah, he mentioned that at the Super Bowl as well when he was asked about it. I know the rumor for this was out in December, that they're trying to get a WNBA team. Yeah, they're working on it. They are working on it. Defense knows Patrick's weakness. I hope Patrick learns to read defenses better, especially under pressure. Well, that's why if you give that guy a clean pocket, things will be a lot different. Let me just quickly see if there are a lot of or any comments on Instagram. No, I think I've gone through. Why are so many people shitting on Jones? Have we lost our mind? Mike says. I think this. I think the problem with Chris Jones is this. He was talking all offseason about wanting to have defensive player of the year and 20 sacks. Didn't even come close to it. How many sacks did Chris Jones end up getting? Not many. Karlaftis led the team with 8, Tershawn Wharton with 6.5, and Chris Jones with 5. Now, I want to be very clear. Chris Jones still played great defensively speaking. He did a lot of things that did not show up on the stat sheet. But when you're paying a guy that much money, I suppose you would want more than 5 sacks. I think that's certainly fair. Now, at the same time, and I'm trying to pull this up as we're talking here, but I believe he was one of the best in the NFL this year when it came to pressures. Let's see. Trey Hendrickson, Myles Garrett. Yeah, there he is. Chris Jones. Number 2 in the NFL among defensive interiors, meaning defensive tackles and 3-4 defensive ends. When it came to pressures, not sacks, pressures. Chris Jones had 74. Zach Allen of the Broncos had 75. Those are the 2 best when it comes to interior defensive linemen. And there aren't a lot of interior defensive linemen who get that many pressures. I know some fans have mixed feelings about pressures. Sometimes pressures can turn into ill-advised passes that translate to interceptions. But then there are times where, if you're just a half second late, the quarterback does enough. And we saw that with Allen and Bryce Young in back-to-back weeks where, yeah, they'll get pressured a lot, but they can find the open receiver at the very last second. And that's not easy for quarterbacks. Even elite quarterbacks struggle with that a lot. You've seen that a lot over the years with Brady, Manning, Mahomes. But yeah, Chris Jones had 74 pressures, the second most by an interior defensive lineman. And that was 8 behind the league leader in Trey Hendrickson, and Myles Garrett also tied for first. So the pressures are, that's a stat, don't get me wrong, but those are not the prime stats that everyone hears or sees or talk about the most. So yeah, I heard something about some sort of a wardrobe robbery that was going on. I don't know. More expensive than in my whole wardrobe? Probably, Robert. Yeah, listen, I'm sure Mahomes will be just fine, and I'm sure he has other pressing matters going on in his life than losing one pair of pants, especially when you make that much money, but it is a very expensive pair of pants. Let's be real here. That's why, look at Harrison Butker. He's the highest paid kicker in NFL history. But how much is he making? He's a kicker after all. What was it? A 4-year, $25 million deal? That's a lot of money. Making anywhere from $3 to $6 million during this run with his contract, his new contract. But we all know damn well that you can't just be spending if you're Harrison Butker, great money right there, but you got to be ultra smart. You're not. He's obviously not flying private like Mahomes does. He is definitely a guy who you might run into at one of the gates at KCI Airport, for instance. So, in fact, I think some of you guys even commented that you saw some of the players at the airport on Tuesday when they were checking out and leaving. Yeah, I've never understood people who post themselves doing criminal activity. That's always been it's always been funny to me. You can still break in because it only takes 2 minutes to smash and grab, and they may not have people at their home guarding it, but probably have cameras. Yeah. And listen, I know there are a lot of rumors about Kelsey and his security, especially now because of how crazy the Swifties are. But yeah. Oh man, I would love it if Kansas City got a pro basketball team. I prefer a hockey team because I'm a massive Vegas Golden Knights fan, and I would definitely go at least once a year to see the Golden Knights. Because I have not been to a game. I went for my birthday for one of the Western Conference Finals games. That was awesome. They won in overtime. But yeah, I would love to see more hockey. That was the same year they won the Stanley Cup too. A lot. Definitely dealt with a lot. He did have a lot of QB hits and pass blocks, didn't he? Let's look at that. I still have the list in front of me. As far as QB hits go, what is it? He had 15 QB hits. Where does that rank? That is 6th most in the NFL. Zach Allen of the Broncos, the other defensive interior lineman that had one more pressure than Jones, he had 28. Karlaftis had 21. Karlaftis, I didn't realize this, was 2nd in the NFL in QB hits. Okay. Then you had Greg Russo with 17. TJ Watt had 17. They were both tied for 3rd. Trey Hendrickson 5th with 16. And then Chris Jones tied with a few others with 15. Jared Verse, who was a rookie for the Rams, and Nick Bosa, who's obviously been doing his thing with the 49ers for quite some time. Also, Leonard Williams had 15 too. So there's your answer there, Lori. Jones is great, but can disappear at times. I mean, statistically speaking, sure, I can agree with that. He certainly does deal with a lot of that for sure. I used to usher at the KC Kings and KC Scouts. Oh, that's cool. At Kemper Arena, man, Kemper Arena. Rochelle, did you ever work any wrestling events at Kemper Arena? I for those of you who are wrestling fans, I went to New Year's Revolution. Revolution. That was the night where DX was supposed to win the tag titles from Rated RKO, Edge and Orton, but they what's his name? Triple H got hurt. But when I was at that event, and this was like at the very start of when like iPhones became a thing, for whatever reason, the usher in my section, and I was very close to the aisle and my dad took my brother, a friend, and I to New Year's Revolution. And for whatever reason, this usher was just being a complete bitch, yelling at everyone from the top of her lungs that had a phone out. She's like, no phones, no phones. I'm like, what are you talking about? Do you not see the number of people who film things at a wrestling event? Like, you could not be on the phone talking to someone or texting someone. There was one girl, she was like, and I was in high school when I went, I was a sophomore in high school. There was one girl who looked like she might have been in high school or college, a section to my right. She just had her phone out in her hand, and the woman was yelling at her. And the girl turned around like, why were you yelling at me? And she's like, put your phone away. The phone was just in her hand. And she was looking back at the lady. It's like, I mean, you obviously don't want to get kicked out because, you know, you paid a lot of money to drive, get a ticket for parking, all that stuff. And it's not, you know, one of those things where it's like, oh, the customer is always right. No. In these kinds of places, especially like security at a club or whatever, when they kick you out, you're out. It is not a whole one of those, oh, the customer's right. No. You're out if they say you're out. So I don't know. That was really weird. Out of anything I've ever attended, a wrestling event, MMA, sports, concerts, anything I've ever attended in my life, I've never seen an usher tell someone to put their phone away. That was the only time I've ever seen that. So I don't know if that was a Kemper Arena thing or a WWE thing. It was odd. It was really, really odd. I actually posted on a wrestling message board because I was getting ready to attend another WWE event a year or two later. I was like, yeah, the last time I went to a wrestling event, this happened. Is this common? And people were like, no, this is the first I've ever heard it. So Yeah, I was just curious if he had ever ushered a wrestling event at Kemper. Brittany owns the women's. Yeah, she does. I like how you call it football/soccer team, but yeah, she does. Yeah, we covered a lot of ground here, guys. I appreciate you all. I'm gonna go ahead and sign off here. Listen, we'll continue to do Red Friday live chats, but I will say this: if I don't have a lot to chime in about, then we'll forego doing a Red Friday live chat. I don't know what the offseason is going to look like. Last offseason was busy. It was a very busy offseason. A lot of good, a lot of bad, just a lot of things to talk about last year. So it felt like we were doing podcasts and live streams just as much during the week like we were anytime during the regular season. So I don't know what the output of live streams is going to look like. Obviously, we'll do a podcast every single Wednesday. There will be some exceptions if I'm traveling, whatnot. And we'll also do a breaking news, a podcast, whenever there is breaking news. So those are the times where we will do podcasts and live streams. The Red Friday live chat, as of right now, I do not plan to do a Red Friday live chat next Friday because it's the off season. Mid-February, mid to late February is very, very quiet. So don't expect a Red Friday live chat this time next Friday. But if there is some significant news during the week involving the Chiefs or the NFL, then sure, we'll definitely hop on. As far as times go, it could be sporadic and different every Friday. So the best thing you can do is make sure you're following me on Facebook and YouTube. If you're not following me on YouTube, make sure you are, because on YouTube, Facebook does not have this capability. But on YouTube, if you're subscribed to the podcast, which is youtube.com/@thechiefszone, you can turn on the bell notification, and whenever I go live, you will get a notification sent to your phone. So even if you're out and about, maybe you're at a grocery store, you've got headphones, whatever, at the gym, in your car, then you can hop on and tune in. YouTube informs you. Facebook doesn't unless you are on the Facebook app. I wish Facebook had that capability, but they don't. So just a heads up there. The best thing you can do is be subscribed to the YouTube channel, because that will allow you to be up to date whenever we go live. So plus we can always get a little bit of help increasing the YouTube numbers. So I will post the link to the YouTube channel right there. So if you guys can subscribe to that, if you haven't done so already, share the links. Please continue to share the content, like, comment, all of that stuff. It definitely helps. Video reels are coming back very soon, so make sure you guys check those out, view them, share them as well. That greatly helps out a lot as well. My name is Farzin Vasugian. Thank you all for joining me on this Red Friday. I will talk to you all later. Peace out.